I never thought I would live to see the day when my own daughter, the little girl whose hand I held as she took her first steps, would stand by silently while her fiancé humiliated me in front of strangers. But that day came, and it came at her wedding. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and maybe mine too. I had dreamed of walking her down the aisle, of seeing her smile in her white dress, of watching her build a life full of love and respect. Instead, I was blindsided by betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. It all began when I arrived at the wedding hall, dressed in my only good suit. The place sparkled with chandeliers, roses, and the smell of champagne. Guests filled the air with laughter. I smiled through my nerves, trying to hide the ache in my chest. I had spent years scraping by, working long shifts, taking odd jobs, just to keep food on the table for my daughter after her mother passed away. Every cent I saved had gone into her education, her comfort, her future, but on that day, none of it seemed to matter. As I stood near the entrance, her fiancé strutted toward me. Tall, sharp suit, hair slicked back like he was walking out of a magazine. I'd always sensed his arrogance, but I remained quiet for the sake of my daughter's happiness. This time, though, he went too far. "Boss," Brandon said loudly, waving to a man standing nearby, a wealthy-looking gentleman in a tailored tuxedo. He put his arm around my shoulder and laughed. "This is Emily's father. Don't mind him, he's just an unemployed loser. Spends his time while doing nothing at all." The words hit me like a hammer. My heart froze. Guests nearby chuckled awkwardly. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, stood just a few feet away. She looked at me, then at Brandon, and lowered her eyes. She didn't defend me. Speak. I felt every eye in the room burn into me. For a moment, shame threatened to crush me. But then something inside me shifted. I didn't argue, didn't fight. I just smiled. That same calm smile I had worn through years of hardship, because what they didn't know, what Brandon had no clue about, was that I was far from the loser he painted me to be. I had secrets, choices, and power that would turn this day upside down before the night was over. And when I revealed the truth, Brandon's smug little smile would vanish forever. My name is Daniel, and for most of my life, I carried calloused hands and a proud heart. I wasn't rich, but I was never a failure. I worked as a mechanic for over 30 years, fixing broken engines, rebuilding cars from scraps, and putting food on the table. When my wife passed away, I became both mother and father to Emily. I worked nights and weekends, skipped meals, and even sold my father's watch just to pay for her tuition. I didn't buy new clothes for myself. I didn't go on vacation. A bit of comfort I denied myself. I gave to her because she was my only child, my only reason to keep going, and I thought she understood that. But then Brandon came into her life. He was flashy, smooth-talking, with that fake charm that fools young girls who have never been burned by the world. He worked at a big law firm, always boasting about his connections, his luxury car, and his penthouse apartment. Emily was enchanted, and before long, she was head over heels. I tried to warn her, told her, "Honey, real men don't have to shout about what they own. Real men prove their worth with actions, not empty talk." But she wouldn't hear it. She said I was old-fashioned, that I didn't understand modern love, so I stayed quiet. I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll treat her well. She'll be happy. But deep down, I knew. I saw the way he looked at me whenever I visited their home, that sneer of superiority, that mocking smile, like I was dirt under his shoe. The worst part? Slowly, I saw Emily change. She used to hug me every time she saw me. She used to call me her hero. But now, she started echoing Brandon's words. "Dad, you wouldn't understand. Dad, maybe you should just relax. Dad, don't embarrass me in front of Brandon's friends." Every word stabbed me. But I swallowed my pride and stayed silent. Because that's what fathers do. Take the pain so our children don't have to. And then came her wedding day. After Brandon's cruel words about me being an unemployed loser, I stood there quietly. But inside, I was remembering everything. He didn't know. He didn't know about the years I spent saving in silence. He didn't know that behind my grease-stained hands, I had invested wisely. That my small repair shop, humble as it looked, was only the surface of what I owned. And he certainly didn't know that the same loser he mocked actually held a stake in the very law firm where his so-called boss worked. Yes, the man standing before me. Brandon's boss wasn't just a stranger. He was someone I knew very well. In fact, he and I had unfinished business, so I smiled at Brandon, and instead of arguing, I simply said, "Interesting introduction, son. Let's see how the rest of the night goes." I could see confusion flicker in his eyes. He had no idea what storm was about to hit him. The music swelled in the hall as guests clinked glasses, laughter echoing against the marble walls. Brandon's boss, Mr. Turner, a stern man in his 60s, raised an eyebrow at me after Brandon's cruel joke. He didn't laugh, simply gave me a small nod, one that Brandon was too distracted to notice. I knew then, Mr. Turner remembered. Years ago, before Brandon even finished law school, I had crossed paths with Turner. Back then, my repair shop had nearly gone bankrupt after a crooked supplier tried to bleed me dry. It was Turner, surprisingly, who helped me with a legal matter, one that saved not only my business but my house. Out of gratitude, I invested carefully in his firm's smaller ventures. Over the years, those small shares grew into something much bigger, but Brandon, he had no clue his future father-in-law was no ordinary mechanic. The wedding ceremony continued, but my mind wasn't on the vows. I kept replaying Brandon's smug tone, the way Emily stayed silent, the laughter of the guests at my expense. My blood boiled, but I held it back, 'cause revenge, I knew, was best served cold in public. Dinner was announced and tables were filled with guests. Brandon strutted around, shaking hands, introducing Emily proudly to his colleagues, and throwing me occasional side glances of mockery. I sat alone at the corner table, ignored, invisible exactly where he wanted me. And then came the toast. Brandon stood tall, champagne glass in hand, his voice booming through the hall. "To my beautiful wife, Emily, the woman who makes me the happiest man alive, and to all of you who share this moment with us." He paused, smirking at me. "Even Emily's father, who may not have much, but at least he showed up." The room chuckled. Emily looked down, ashamed, but still silent. That was it. I stood up slowly, lifting my own glass. The room quieted as all eyes turned toward me. "To my daughter and her new husband," I began, my voice steady but laced with steel. "May your life be filled with honesty, respect, and humility. Things more valuable than money or titles." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Dad, sit down. Don't embarrass yourself." But I didn't sit. I turned to his boss, Mr. Turner, and said clearly, "It's good to see you again. It's been a while since we reviewed the firm's quarterly numbers together." The room froze. Brandon blinked, confused. His boss chuckled softly and raised his glass toward me. "Daniel, I was wondering when you'd bring it up." Yes, ladies and gentlemen. What Brandon forgot to mention is that this unemployed loser actually happens to be one of the silent partners of our firm. In fact, without his early investments, we wouldn't be standing here with the success we have today. Gasps filled the room. Brandon's smug smile vanished in an instant. His glass trembled in his hand. Emily's eyes shot wide open. "Dad, what?" she whispered. I looked directly at Brandon, my voice calm but razor sharp. "You see, son, respect isn't something you buy with a fancy car or a tailored suit. It's earned. And today, you showed everyone here exactly who you really are." The hall erupted in whispers. Some guests avoided Brandon's gaze. His own boss looked at him with clear disappointment. For the first time that evening, Brandon had no words. But I wasn't done yet, because the biggest revelation was still to come. The wedding hall buzzed with whispers, forks clinking nervously against plates. Brandon's smugness had melted into pure panic. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted from guest to guest. Searching for support that wasn't there, Emily looked torn, her hands trembling as she glanced between him and me. My daughter had always seen Brandon as a man of power, the one who could provide her with the life she thought she deserved. But in that moment, the mask fell. I cleared my throat, keeping my gaze locked on Brandon. "Let me tell you something I'd never shared before. Emily, while your fiancé was busy calling me a loser, I was quietly building a future for you. Every extra shift, every sleepless night, every dollar saved wasn't for me. It was for you. That's why I invested. That's why I sacrificed. And today, standing here, I can tell you one thing. I will never regret doing that for my daughter. But I do regret staying silent while a man like him disrespected me and you. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Mr. Turner shook his head, glaring at Brandon. This is how you treat family. Brandon, maybe you're not the man I thought you were. Brandon stammered, Mr. Turner. Sir, please, you don't understand. But Turner raised his hand to silence him. Enough. I can't have a man like you representing my firm. You're done. Gasps echoed. Brandon's face went pale. In one night, his arrogance had cost him not only his dignity, but also his career. Emily burst into tears. Covering her face with her veil, she turned to me, her voice shaking. Dad, I didn't know. I thought I placed a hand on her shoulder. You thought money made a man. Now you know it's respect, love, and character. And unfortunately, your husband failed all three. Brandon slammed his glass on the table. This isn't over, he spat, storming out of the hall, his tie undone, his pride shattered. The silence that followed was heavy. Yes avoided Emily's eyes, unsure what to say. Slowly, she turned back to me, her voice breaking. Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I stood there and let him humiliate you. I became blind. I sighed deeply, my heart heavy. Emily, you're still my daughter. No matter what, I'll always love you. But forgiveness isn't words, it's change. If you truly regret this, prove it by how you live from now on. Her tears fell faster, and she collapsed into my arms. For the first time in years, she hugged me like she used to, clinging tightly, afraid I might disappear. The guests, touched by the scene, began clapping softly. It wasn't for me or for her. It was for the truth finally being spoken aloud as I stood there. Holding my broken but repentant daughter, I realized something important. This day wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. It was about showing that no matter how much others tried to tear me down, dignity could not be stolen. And in the end, I walked out of that hall with my head held high, not as an unemployed loser, but as a father who refused to be silenced.